gears again, and with that, we have a threat possibly happening coming out of Iran. And because of that threat, if they happen to get a nuclear weapon, it's pretty well known that they'll probably use it against Israel. Are you willing to vote to do a preemptive strike on Iran?
First, as an Army officer, having served a tour in Iraq and having studied not only the Geneva Convention, knowing that we have our only democratic ally, the State of Israel, in that area, who's been threatened to be wiped from the map, not just from radicals in the country, but from the president of the nation. And we have a vested interest there. Talk about a preemptive strike? Yes, I do. Support Israel, stand with them, send that message, because it's just like as an officer, I'm in uniform, and I show up, by my mere presence, you respect that authority. The credibility of the United States is in question, folks, because we don't have the strong leadership that we've once had. And Obama keeps talking about the respect has diminished for America. It's for a reason. When you don't follow through, when you go to other nations and you apologize for America, that's got to stop. I'm proud of our country. I'm proud to use our national defense and our military to project, as we've done for 100+ years, our foreign policy in a robust fashion. I understand that. I understand the same way as commanding soldiers. When I had armed soldiers on the border, people did not come across because they respect that authority or the threat of force. This is where we need to stand up with our allies to bring stability to that region and tell Iran, because obviously sanctions are not working, that you need to stop. If not, there's consequences. And that can be an option. I'm not saying that we do that, but when you say that, it works.
If we have intelligence information that shows that Iran is going to launch a first strike attack on anybody, then most certainly I would vote to launch a first strike attack on Iran. The interesting thing, though, is Congress has really not upheld its authority for the last several decades. When you go to war, the Constitution says that Congress shall make war, that they'll take a vote and decide whether or not to go to war. How they've been doing it for the last several decades is they give the president the authority to go make war. And I don't think that that's right, and I don't think that that's constitutional. And I would hope if I was in Congress and if they were going to launch a first strike, that I would be given the opportunity to vote on that. And if I wasn't given the opportunity to vote on that, I am pretty darn good at slowing things down. If any of you have taken a look at some of the things that I've done in the legislature, I'm very good at grinding things to a halt. And I would use that power to grind this to a halt. And I would even go further than that. I would tell Iran that if a nuclear bomb device is exploded anywhere in the world, and especially on American soil, we will consider that an act of war, and we will turn your nation to collapse. That's what I would tell them. They need to know that this is mutually assured destruction. The same thing that kept the Soviets from attacking us. They need to know that we are willing to do that. We're willing to push the button.
I've actually sponsored an amendment that says very early on that if you can't acknowledge a peaceful existence for Israel, you get no money. It was actually used as a cornerstone for our budget decisions on foreign policy. I'm also dropping a bill this week. We've been working with our friends from Israel that we actually will condone and support, because our president will not, any preemptive strike that Israel shall take against Iran. I also want to make sure that you understand that the United States has always been behind in its discovery on nuclear armament. Always behind. So we will have to support getting tough. Sanctions don't work anymore. They haven't. We've had lack of leadership in the last two presidents to actually do that. I also have a very good friend, one of the benefits of a wonderful freshman class. His name is, he's from New York, and what he is looking at is reforming the War Powers Act to bring that back. And just this year, when we actually were talking about Libya, we actually voted, as well as I did, voted against utilizing force with Libya, unless it came back and had accountability to Congress.
Rebuttal?
Rebuttal? Okay.
Yes. Just clarification of points of who actually has the authority to do this. This is part of our military and the President of the United States. In any preemptive strike, it's the President of the United States. You brief the leadership in the House and Senate. You brief the Senate Armed Services, the Armed Services Committee, the Intelligence Committee, the key leadership. The President, the Commander-in-Chief, is not just the figurehead, the leader of our country. It's Commander-in-Chief, the leader of our armed forces. Those are tactical decisions that are left into the hands of the SecDef and with the authority of the President. Clearly, you want to include, of course, Congress. But here, and I take issue with the last two presidents, this has been an evolution. We have expended all of our options for sanctions to talk nice. That's when we have to talk tough. President Bush did some actions based on intelligence with Secretary Powell, and we acted. We went to war in 2 different theaters. And that's what we need to do, to talk tough and then follow it up. If we make a threat, folks, we better follow through. Otherwise, the credibility of our nation's at risk.
The War Powers Act is unconstitutional, and it does not supersede the Constitution. The Constitution says that Congress makes war. And they should have never voted to give the President the arbitrary authority to get us into a war on his own accord. Because that's dangerous, because after you're in a war, you really can't run the clock backwards. Then you have to go ahead and go forward. That's dangerous and it's unconstitutional. And mere legislation that comes from Congress does not supersede the Constitution. The Constitution is properly amended when a bill comes out of Congress, goes to the states for ratification. That's how you change the Constitution. You don't just ignore the Constitution and you don't pass bills that are unconstitutional.